And call us to order at 5:34 p.m. for our regular meeting of Vallejo Flood and Wastewater District. And I'll ask our clerk to please conduct the roll call.
Yes, President. President Soos.
Present.
Vice President Bergenser.
Present.
Secretary Matulak.
Present.
Trustee James.
Present.
Trustee Matias.
Here.
Trustee Gordon. Here. Let it be known for the record that Trustee Lady and Palmeris are not invited to the meeting, may be excused.
All right, that brings us to our Pledge of Allegiance. I'll ask everyone to please stand and join us for the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, that is going to bring us to our approval of the agenda, and I'll first ask if there are any requests to changes to the agenda. And I believe staff made one change to the agenda.
Madam President, so we noticed that there was an item missing in one of the agendas, not full item, just a resolution to item 4E. So this resolution the agenda was amended, we published on the website, and you'll have a copy of the resolution in front of you. That was the only piece that was missing from this item, everything else was included in the original agenda.
Thank you very much. If there's no other requests for changes or clarifications, is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
I believe that's unanimous. So that agenda is passed. That's gonna bring us to item 4, awards and commendations. And we have one achievement award to share this evening. I'll turn it over to General Manager Tom to share this more information.
Thank you, I appreciate it. So we're lucky to have one of the former CWA presidents. He was president of all CWA in 2022-23. So I will have Jeff Tucker, our business service director, present the award.
So as Mark noted, my name is Jeff Tucker. Today I'm talking to you as the former president of the California Water Environment Association, or CWEA. CWEA is an 11,000 member organization in the state of California. It's got 17 local sections to it, and we're the association for wastewater employees in the state of California. Our mission is really about educating the members that we have, all 11,000 members, educating them, providing technical education training, promoting jobs within the water sector, trying to get more people to come into the sector, preparing members for promotion into supervisory leadership positions, and doing competency-based certifications for positions like collection workers, laboratory, environmental compliance, mechanics, electrical and instrumentation, and advanced water treatment operation. One of the other things we do as an association is provide awards on an annual basis, which is why we're here tonight. About 2.5 weeks ago, the Redwood Empire section of CWEA had its awards banquet and awarded out, I forget how many, 20 or 25 different awards. But we presented at that time the Engineering Achievement Award to the Vallejo Flood and Wastewater District for the Secondary Odor Control Rehabilitation and Media Filter Replacement Project. The application noted the reasons and the reasons why this project was chosen was specifically for the speed of completion that was noted within it, the complexity of the project itself, and the use of advanced odor control technologies. So the committee, when looking at projects as a whole, considered this to be one of the best engineering projects that they've seen in the entire region, and presented the award a couple weeks ago to Bill Ash and to the entire engineering team and technical services team for Vallejo Flood and Wastewater District. So at this point, this is just the local section award. This project is now going to be advanced to the state level, where they'll compete at a statewide level during the sand and sand category, and we'll know the results of that in April. With that, I'd like to congratulate Vallejo Flood and Wastewater District for receiving the Engineering Achievement Award for 2025. And if you please come up.
All right, we have our engineer.
We would love if we could get a photograph of the board with this as well.
Yeah.
Do
you all want to come up? Maybe we can go this direction. Or do you want to go in front and turn around and go that way? Put that in the background?
Yeah, we have it signed in the back.
Yeah, let's do that. All right, we'll take a brief moment for a photo.
It's tight.
It's tight.
Sorry, you know.
I don't know.
Would we have it any other way?
You guys have got that.
All right, so we'll have two rows. Slightly shorter folks, everybody's slightly shorter folks in the front. And we'll need to come in from Bill through.
Yeah, we're good
We need to be tighter together, There you go.
A little bit closer.
Sides of you guys, you're like.
Alex,
Yeah.
And. All right, that'll work.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, all right. well,
Great. On
Look
three.
at us. 1, 2.
1, 2, 3.
Thank you. Congratulations.
All right,
All right.
excellent.
Award.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you. All good.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm excited to tell you. We'll see you.
Okay, there you go.
But actually tonight, tell me.
How the.
They should all be in.
All right, I think with that, we are all back seated. I'll note that trustee Letajou is present as well. And that will bring us to item 5, election of officers. And now trustee Palmer is here. So with that, I'll pass it over to our clerk, who can share a little more about how the election is conducted.
Thank you, Madam President. So every year the board holds elections for the positions of president, vice president, and secretary. Historically, the president and vice president have represented what the city council does, same as it's mostly the same boards. And the secretary tends to be the most recent elected member with the most votes. However, this was an election year, so we don't have such many. Regardless of what we have done historically, anybody can run for any positions if they decide to do so. So once from this point on, for this item specifically, starting with the president position, Secretary Matulak will take over as presiding officer. He will run that first election, and then once the president gets elected, such person will preside over the president. And then we'll move on to the vice president and finally the secretary. And whenever you're ready, Secretary Matulak, we can start taking nominations.
All right, thank you, sir. Clerk, would anyone like to nominate someone or themselves for the president of the board?
I'll nominate President Suarez.
Okay, are there any other nominations? Trustee
I'm gonna-
Matias.
Nominate Dr. Letajou
Okay,
for president.
right now we have President Source and Trustee Letajou. Any other nominations for president? Seeing none, I'll turn it over to Mr. Clerk to do the roll call.
Yes. Seeing as we have 2 positions, we'll start first with president source. It'll be an I or name, and that's what we'll do the cycle.
Alright.
So president source,
Aye.
vice president Braganza,
Aye.
Secretary Matulak,
Aye.
trustee James,
Nay.
trustee Letajou,
Nay.
trustee Palmeras,
Aye.
trustee Matias,
Nay.
and trustee Gordon.
Nay.
So we have a tie.
Wow.
Fight to the death. Arms.
I'm not sure, I don't believe that.
So the motion fails,
Motion detail, yes, correct.
right, so then there would be a vote for the second nominee.
Mhm.
And then if that failed as well,
Mhm.
then the board gets to decide what their process will be.
So we'll do again, and this is for trustee Letajou to be president, president source.
So I'll just say, I had this conversation with the general manager when I first took office, that we had talked about some of the advantages of having the mayor serve as president, representing the entire district. and having the office and the assistant and kind of some of the infrastructure that the mayor's role. I don't have a problem passing it off, but I do think that there's value in having the mayor serve in the role. So I'm gonna vote no with much respect to my colleague.
Vice President Regenza,
Aye.
Secretary Matulak,
Aye.
Trustee James,
Aye.
Trustee Palmeris,
Nay.
Trustee Matias.
Aye.
Trustee Lighty,
Aye.
Trustee Gordon.
Aye.
Okay, so Trustee.
Congratulations.
Trustee Lighty is now president.
At this time, typically what happens is that the president would then hold the nominations for the vice president and following that for the secretary.
Correct. And you know what I should do? Would you mind to give that copy to
Oh, yeah.
President Lighty so she can present her meeting?
Is that
I do know, if I can interrupt you, I do know that, I know that at the city council, after all the elections, and you guys can arrange seats, you know, so like, it's can figure it out.
We can do that, okay.
Whatever you want to do. Thanks.
Okay, so our next,
Congratulations.
so our next, will be voting for our vice president. So are there any nominations for vice president?
I nominate this Cassandra James.
I reject that nomination.
Reject it?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Yes. I reject, thank you though.
Oh. Go ahead. Oh, no, go ahead. I was gonna nominate Mayor Sars as the next president. I was gonna do the same.
Sure. I mean, I'm not a pilot.
Was that, do you accept the nomination?
Sure.
Yes, okay. So with that in mind, Trustee, President Lighty.
Aye.
Vice President Regenza,
Aye.
Secretary Matulak,
Aye.
Trustee James,
Aye.
Trustee Palmeris,
Aye.
Trustee Matias.
Aye.
And Trustee Gordon.
Aye.
All right, congratulations, you're another Vice President.
Can I keep my name tag though?
Yes, you can take this with you.
Yeah, hang it up at home.
Yes.
In the fridge.
And now we'll open the floor so we can start taking nominations for secretary.
I nominate Mr. Matula to continue.
I'm not favor.
Is that a yes?
Sure.
Yes.
All right, so President Lighty.
Aye.
Secretary Source. No, sorry,
Vice
Vice President Source. The two get rearranged, I'm sorry, don't mind me. Was that an aye, Vice President?
Yeah.
Vice President. And Secretary Matulak,
Abstain.
staying.
Wow.
Trustee Regenza,
Aye.
Trustee James,
Aye. Voice of the.
Trustee Palmeris,
Aye.
Trustee Matias,
Yes.
and Trustee Gordon.
Aye.
Okay, so the vote passes, 7-1. So congratulations.
No, just.
If you don't, you are actually supposed to vote unless there's a conflict of interest, which in this case, there's
But
no.
the abstention automatically goes to the majority, so.
In this case.
Yes.
Yes.
So we're going to go to item 6, right?
That's
And we're moving,
correct. That's good, yes.
so we're moving to our consent calendar. And Mr. Clerk, is there any public comment regarding the consent calendar?
We have not received any public comment online, Madam President, and there's no public in person.
Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, sure.
One extra copy, I'm sorry.
I'll move approval of the consent calendar.
We're on the consent calendar, yes?
But
Correct.
I've heard it consent.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and now you can ask if they're all in favor.
So are we all in favor?
Yeah.
Good.
The motion carries unanimously.
Next month I'll be really good. Okay. So we've accepted everything on the consent calendar, A through G, right?
Yes.
Okay. So moving on to the next agenda item, administrative item, General Manager Tomko, would you please announce the item?
Sure. We have a presentation, we have a presentation, so this is, looking at the Mare Island, mediator. If you can pull up my presentation.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to.
So this is, based on the council meetings, the recent council meeting, there was talk for Mare Island to bring in a mediator and we wanted to act quickly to make sure that, because we understood that we wanted this done fairly quickly, and so we're going to have to wait another month. We want to get it on this agenda, so that we could also potentially get some approval here as well. Next slide, please. So the recommendation is to authorize the general manager and general counsel to contract with a mediator to conduct a confidential mediation with the city of Blair and the Mare Island Company to address allocations of responsibilities for operations, maintenance, repair, replacement, and potential expansion of the Mare Island sanitary sewer and stormwater infrastructure. At this point, I turn it over to Claire, our general counsel, Collins, to talk about some of the talk about mediation and what that actually means, about the timing and what that will include.
So mediation is a legal process. If you haven't been part of it before, mediations can take a number of different forms, but in general, mediation is, our goal is to avoid the court system. The court system is expensive, it is long and drawn out, and it is not necessarily the best way to resolve differences because you put a third party in charge of the outcome. A mediation is conducted by a private mediator that you pay for. And the goal of mediation is to come to a joint resolution to avoid a lawsuit. If you've been involved in mediation before, most mediations are relatively short, okay? If this is involving a lawsuit or a claim that is something like a personal injury, car accident, property damage, employment claims, these are mediations that are usually 1 at the most 2 days. That is not the mediation that I would be anticipating here. So mediations that involve multiple parties in complex factual situations are typically what we would call a long-term mediation. And this is something where we bring in a mediator who is almost always a retired judge or a former litigating attorney. We pay them typically on a daily basis. The going rate is $10,000 a day. And they work with the parties to try to achieve an outcome. The reason why the general manager wanted me to describe this to you is because if you've been involved in sort of isolated lawsuits where they were just trying to come to a dollar figure because it was, again, resolving a property damage, personal injury, or like employment claim, those are much simpler than the factual issues that's before us right now. I'm in another case right now where we have a long-term mediator. Their engagement is a year. I don't know if it would take a year in this case, but I wanted to set reasonable expectations for this board that we would expect that a mediation would probably last several months. And it would require sort of a set of fact finding, a set of discussions with the mediator, and I would expect it to have something on the order of, maybe 5 or 6 meetings with the mediator over a series of months. So that said, I wanted to be sure we were all sort of on the same page about what we thought a mediation would look like. We obviously found out about this through watching the city council meeting. I think it's a great idea if we find the right mediator. So the first step is typically working to find the right mediator that all 3 parties agree upon, and then working through sort of a multi-step process. So I want to make sure that everyone here sort of understands that process. If you have any questions about it, I'm happy to answer it. But the last thing I'll just mention about mediation is typically it is confidential. And that is to say, it's confidential to the extent that now all the documents we would be exchanging are all public documents, right? That's not confidential. And you can't take a mediation and say things in mediation to make things that are otherwise public secret. But what we do say is if somebody admits something in mediation, that can't be used against them later. So if someone says, I'd be willing to settle with you for $1 million, you can't go back and bring that to court. They go, she said she'd settle with me for $1 million, so therefore she's guilty, right? Can't do that. So the mediation privilege is pretty strong and it helps the parties to be a little more candid in order to try to achieve resolution. Supervisor.
Just a question, can you go over what took place at the city council meeting, since I'm the only person that doesn't sit in that body,
You
and
don't
I
watch
didn't
it.
receive. But it had not received the official update from the city to this board.
I would like to defer to someone who's actually in the room at the time, but my understanding is that the city attorney was requested to provide an update and that she recommended a mediation. I think with the mediator, that's already known to the city, but I don't know anything more than that. The city attorney has not contacted me directly.
So the item was brought by trustee Paul Mars and myself in our roles, having been trying to convene meetings to work through the infrastructure issues. And the recommendation we made that the council adopted was to have the work group focus on the operational side of things and to direct the city attorney to pursue mediation to deal with the infrastructure ownership issues. So that is, the expectation, I think, is that the city attorney would be following up with VFWD. And she did mention that she had a mediator that she might want to suggest at the meeting.
Let me ask a question. So maybe we're using the word mediator too liberally in this case. I didn't realize there was such a very strict definition, from your perspective. But in conversations with everyone else, when I'm thinking mediator, I'm thinking about just not necessarily from a perspective of avoiding a lawsuit, but just someone to use a common parlance word, just like kind of babysit us through the process.
Yeah.
She's got a job.
Facilitator.
Facilitator, and like, I don't know, I mean, and I feel like that term mediator was thrown around, like, yeah, I'm gonna start using that word. But, I mean, does this make sense? I mean, if we swapped out mediator with facilitator, does that like change the dynamic of what's going on entirely?
It does.
Okay.
The biggest, there's two differences. First of all, facilitator, most facilitators, I would say, aren't lawyers.
Yeah.
The issues that are really between the district, the city, and the developer are frankly primarily legal in nature. So I think it would be I would recommend a mediator over a facilitator, also because of the confidentiality component to it. I think even if it's not necessarily your intention as a default, I actually think that a mediator is a really smart idea. So it does provide a level of base knowledge by having again, either a former judge or a former litigator. Really does help focus the parties on the most important legal issues. And this really is, there are a large number of legally contested issues here that are hard to untangle, I would
Yeah.
say. So
Sure.
I whether you intended it that way or not, I would say that a mediator would be more. No, look, I'm a lawyer, right? And so when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? So it's my comfort zone. I think it's a good idea, and I think it's better than a facilitator. I think a facilitator isn't going to have as much base knowledge or the confidentiality component that'll help move things along.
Sure. I think from this perspective, from the district's perspective, yes, it makes sense. And frankly, I mean, we have the experts here to talk about, the operational engineering issues. I think when I switch hats and go to the city of Vallejo, that I think we don't necessarily have, not necessarily the bandwidth, but maybe the expertise plus bandwidth to facilitate the more of the operational engineering stuff, the non-legal issues with us. So like, I feel that I'm compelled to say that from the city of Vallejo perspective, that we need, frankly, both, like the facilitator aspect and also the legal aspect. That's farther down the road. But for here, I feel like you got your eye on the ball on this one. I'm looking at you. I don't know if I'm putting you on the pressure, but also, I mean, yeah, there really should be someone with kind of that legal expertise, the mediator aspect as well. But I mean, I'm open to discussion if we need to expand the scope of this, or maybe this is have we missed the mark at
Can I just make one
Yeah, go ahead.
suggestion here? Because Mark actually has a bit of a factual presentation I think he wants to make as part of this, and this is,
Oh, that might
if
answer
you see, not mine, I wonder if it might answer some questions, and maybe we could sort of circle back to this idea at the end.
Yeah.
If that would be all right, just because I just wonder if some of your questions might be answered through Mark's presentation.
I just wanna clarify, like, what did the city council vote on? So did they vote on a facilitator or did they vote on a meeting? Okay,
For
that's why I
for
just
the
wanna,
legal. for the
yeah, so I just
legal
wanna
part.
make sure that I understood like what the vote was on.
Well, I will say that, I mean, thank you to the city council members for moving this forward. We're glad that this will actually help move this forward, so we really appreciate it. So I wanted to talk just generally, I'm not trying to get into any detail or anything, but I want to show kind of the complications to ownership, because we haven't really had a discussion. It's, I think in the council meeting, it was like, oh, well, whoever owns this is gonna be, they're gonna have a lot of, they own everything, and it's gonna cost a lot of money. There's a lot of parts to ownership, and it's very complicated, and that's why I think the mediator will help. So operation, we've been operating the system in 1974. We started taking over all flow from there. We've been operating it since the Navy left. I mean, we are fully operating the system we have ever since. We operate it very well. I don't know how often you've heard from the residents out there that, hey, my sewers don't work, nothing works out here, everything's backed up, we can't flush. I don't think you ever have. We operate very well, and testament to our maintenance team. I mean, they're out there daily, making sure all the pump stations work, and that's the maintenance part. So we are maintaining it, making sure it all works. But other parts of ownership are the legal title of the pipes, the pumps, the facilities. Where's the legal titles for those? I mean, and there's a lot of different agreements that are covering those. Easements of facilities, so facilities that are out there, I mean, are there easements for it? Who has the planning responsibility? So for example, there's a specific plan, there's an infrastructure plan. Well, that's clearly the developer. So that is a part of ownership. So the planning responsibility, the capital improvement responsibility, I'll kind of talk about that. But that's really the responsibility of the developer, and I'll kind of get into that. Liability, who's responsible if the system fails? Who's responsible there? And granted, I'm being very general here. There's different parts of the system too. There's, Farragut that's already built. There's Coral C that's being built. There's also other property owners with Florida University. So it's a myriad of different ownerships as well. But in general, talking about the Eastern Early Transfer piece, which is the piece that Lennar owned and then gave to the Nimitz and the Maryland Company, and then the other piece, the northern part. Regulatory accountability is another one. So who with the regulations, who's responsible for those? The ability and responsibility to raise funds. Who can raise funds? Who can do CFDs? Who can do rates? I mean, how do you raise money to pay for these facilities? So these are all questions of partly ownership, and who, I don't think there's, as you can see, there's really no party that owns it all. But kind of the question the last council meeting is, who does pay? I mean, really this comes down to money, like where's the big money in this? And the big money is the capital infrastructure. It's the cost of putting in all this new infrastructure. That's the huge cost. It's millions of dollars. I saw in the paper they had quoted somebody that was like $260 million. I hope it's not that much. But there's a lot of infrastructure that needs to be replaced. It's a lot of old Navy infrastructure. And depending on the development scheme, that could cost a lot of money, all of that capital going in. But the part that's kind of missing in a lot of things is the rehab and rehabilitation and replacement of existing. Because until that capital comes in to replace a lot of infrastructure, what do you do with what's there? There's costs associated with that as it wears out. And so I'm not sure if this is where my example, I was trying to figure an example of how to make this kind of make sense. And I was looking at, like, if you go lease a car, so there's a car owner, and then you go lease it from them. And then you're required to get insurance. So you have another property person that has to do that. And then there's certain requirements that you have to maintain the car. So you change the oil, you do different things. But if something major happens with the car, then you probably go back to the property owner, and they're probably responsible for that because that's in the contract. So there's kind of a myriad in that. There's different things that can happen. But I think what's most clear and that we're really trying to stress is that when you lease a car, it's not expected that the car is going to be better when you bring it back. It's going to depreciate. There's going to be depreciation on the car. So just like when we're maintaining a sewer system, we started out, the sewer system's already in poor shape. It's not like we made it better. Like, we have made it better. Actually, we've done some repairs and done different things, but the system itself as a whole continues to degrade and have some issues. It wasn't the intent that maintenance means that we're going to make it a lot better.
And if I may just interject for a moment, if we talk about the timing on this, I think telling the story of Mare Island is so important because I think this gets lost in the discussion. The Navy was out there for 150 years and we didn't take over receiving their sewage until it got to the other side of the strait. Right, so we took on, so let me just go back real quickly on history. The Clean Water Act was passed in 1970, Porter Cologne Act around the same time. Porter Cologne Act is our California version of the Clean Water Act. So this is 1970, early days of the environmental movement, and this is when we as a nation started to have requirements to treat water, to treat wastewater. The Navy realized, we don't have the capacity on Mare Island to treat all the wastewater that we're producing here. They had this little thing we call packet plants, small treatment facility wasn't meeting the standards of the Clean Water Act. So they call up the FWD and they're like, can you take our sewage? Because we can't treat it anymore. So that's why it's in the early 70s that we take it over, right? But what they were doing is they were pumping it across the strait and then we were receiving it. They paid us a bunch of money so we would make more room in our treatment plant. But we weren't handling it on the island at all. We were receiving it from across the strait. And then the base was decommissioned, right? We go through BRAC in the 90s. And at the very beginning of this, there was a special district JPA set up in the 1990s that started operating all the sewer stuff out there. It wasn't us. And then we don't take over until late 90s, early 2000s. And it's under a very specific set of circumstances that says we are expecting a developer to come in here and within a very short amount of time, replace all this crappy infrastructure. In a very short amount of time. That was 26 years ago, right? And so it was in terrible condition 26 years ago, and that development hasn't happened. So the expectations of the parties are different. So I'm sorry for stealing your thunder. That storyline, not when you think about where we are today. Sorry, I'll let you.
Yeah, so true. So I mean, what we're really trying to focus just to have clarity on the capital costs. So this is the development agreement in 2001, this was with Lennar, and so looking at it as far as the yellow portion. So the developer as a project cost will construct and install all infrastructure in accordance with the master infrastructure plan. It was certainly the expectation that the developer was going to install the infrastructure. I mean, I think that was very clear. And this is more of what Claire was talking about. So this is from our board communication in June 2003. So we annexed Mare Island in 2003. That's what dissolved the Maryland Utility District. We took it over. So then user rates could be charged. But in this, it says the developers are obligated to install new infrastructure, which will result in several $1 million of expenditure over the next several years. The district is not intending to install any of the significant infrastructure required. And it's also the further as it goes, it talked about that it was talking about several years, the infrastructure being installed in several years. And as you said, 26 years later, the infrastructure wasn't installed at all. So this was the board at that time. We're thinking, hey, we're going to operate, we're going to maintain this sewer system because the developer's going to come in and put in all this capital. So that was the understanding in 2003 when we annexed.
It was the basis upon which the district accepted by was that they weren't going to have to do the capital replacement.
So in 2022, so this is the development agreement with Nimitz. It says all costs related to the developer's work, including costs of constructing and installing backbone infrastructure, and any development project conditions of approval shall be borne solely by developer. So what's important here is the backbone infrastructure is the infrastructure improvements. They still haven't finished the infrastructure plan, but it's everything that's going to be in the new specific plan. So developers are fully responsible. What's important about this as well, though, is that it also talks about any development project conditions of approval. So this is where we come in. So Connolly Porter comes in and say, hey, we have these conditions of approval. The developer is solely responsible for this. There are conditions of approval to come in to work on the system. They're solely responsible. And so that basically put the burden on the developer that you're responsible for all this infrastructure. To further clarify this, we did get a letter from MIC's Maryland Council, Maryland Council, and it says MIC has never taken the position that the FWD or its ratepayers should or will be responsible for financing new infrastructure construction on the island to serve development. So in this instance, it seems like it's very clear who's paying for the capital infrastructure now and in the future. So that's very clear. So hopefully as we get to mediation, this will be very clear. And it's regardless of ownership, MIC is responsible for the infrastructure capital costs. I think that's very clear. And we'll get into that with mediation.
I didn't get that last part of the letter. Who's into the letter?
So that was a Maryland Companies Council sent that to us. And you received a copy as well. They did CC already. So here's the big one. This is the one that we believe kind of has the most interesting parts to it. The rehab and rehabilitation and replacement. So this is the infrastructure. Until the new infrastructure is put in place, what do you do with the existing infrastructure? Who pays for that? And this is that it's not included in anything because the original intent that the new infrastructure would become very quickly, but it didn't. And so there was none of the agreements really cover this part, and this is where a lot of the unknown is really happening because it was unexpected. Everybody thought it was going to happen quick. It didn't happen. It was unexpected. It's unknown what's going to fail out there, and we have some ideas of things that are going to fail. The district has taken the extra responsibility. So if something we know something's going to fail or we're not going to be able to serve our customers, we have replaced it. So example, the Maryland Force Main, $6 million job, we replaced it. We were looking at it, maintaining it. It was having leaks, we kept patching it. We knew that there could be an environmental problem, we replaced it. The domestic pump station 4, which is our main pump station that pumps off the island. Right now, we have a project out there that's replacing pumps, looking at different mechanical, electrical components to make that work. Domestic pump station 3 was ready to fail, bad shape. We wanted to make sure that it got fixed before anything happened. So like in a big storm like the one today, we're not getting called out there because we have a lot of other work to do. So the district has been responsible and we have been jumping in when we have to. But this is the part that's pretty unknown. What's most critical about the timing is that if the specific plan, if say city council approves a specific plan for 40 or 50 years, who pays for this? Like that's not in the district's best interest at all. And so these are the parts that really have to be figured out because if you have a 40 or 50 year specific plan and we know that the developer's responsible for it, if there's parts of the specific plan that break down, but they're not at that phase, who pays for that? So these are some of the big questions on capital costs. So if there's a capital cost for that, that could be significant.
I'll also just mention again, we talked about subsidy in the past. Remember, there are only very few hundred parcel owners out there. And the size of the cost we're talking about could never be borne just by the people on their island, right?
Yeah.
So that means if we were to, as a district, right, wherever your district has, to pay for that, it means that the whole of the mainland would be subsidizing their island. And that was never the intent when the annexation happened. When the annexation happened, it was the understanding that the city was going to require the developer to put this stuff in. And so what's been difficult, I think, is that the development plans didn't come with timelines. And if they had, then this, hopefully would have been completed again 20 years ago. So we're in this place where this rehabilitation hasn't occurred. And so it's just been Band-Aids as opposed to replacement.
And then that's actually a great point. But the user rates are meant to kind of pay for everything, but they're not to pay for all the infrastructure on the island. In fact, I think Jeff was looking at it today. I don't know if you want to just report it.
I can give you some very round numbers. We collect on the island for sewer rates about 540,000 a year. Of that, about 400,000 of it, 410,000 goes to just treatment. So I'll just taking the water, treating it, the chemicals, electricity, getting everything here, treatment, which leaves about 130 or 135,000 a year to take care of what the system on the island. We estimate right now we spend about 110,000 a year on existing activities, which leaves about 25,000 to deal with things like pump station repairs, or like we talked about with domestic 4, domestic 3, or the pipeline. So 35,000 a year compared to how much, well, several $1 million I think we put into Dawn 4.
Not that much.
Yeah, this one.
$1.5 It's only electrical improvements.
So you consider, so you've got $1.5 million in improvements for one pump station, and we'll only have about $30,000 to pay for it on a yearly basis.
Right.
Just to give the scale there.
And that's why, trying to figure this out is really important because if we need to raise user rates, like there or do something else to try to pay for some of this infrastructure. Or so we're fully, embracing the mediation to try to figure this out. And that's why it's a partnership. I mean, we've got to work together with the city and Maryland Company to figure this out. There's parts that are theirs, there's parts that may do the cities, and to figure this out. I mean, the original idea in the beginning was that we were all working together to try to develop the island, and we continue to do it. We just got the $1.9 million the appropriation to help with infrastructure out there. So we're continuing to do our part to help that out. I think it's clear that the capital improvements are the developer's responsibility. I think it's not the DDA's. Hopefully that's not unclear as well. And then the importance of the specific plan timing is very important. Like I said, it really affects the replacement and rehabilitation part. If the specific plan is 50 years, that's a problem for the rehab and rehabilitation. If it's only 10 years, that's a lot better. And that was what Sam was intended. As you start to replace infrastructure, that takes care of a lot of the problems. And it's like kind of, I think as things start going, things start happening, more people move in, everything starts looking more rosy. It starts to get a lot better. I just want to clarify that, as I have before, that maintenance isn't meant to make things better. Maintenance basically maintains it as it is, and it depreciates over time. Because there has been, we've heard that by maintaining it, somehow we're going to fix all these problems. But that's certainly not the case. So the action before you is basically, it's to, I can read it again so you don't have to say it again to vote. It's to authorize the general manager and general counsel to contract with a mediator to conduct a confidential mediation with the city of Vallejo and the Mare Island Company to address allocation of responsibilities for operations, maintenance, repair, replacement, and potential expansion of the Mare Island sanitary sewer and stormwater infrastructure.
Are we gonna take public comment before we?
Yes. We have no public comment online and there's no public comments. And you may open the floor for discussion.
Thank you. So here's my question. What if the Vallejo City Council, just playing out a scenario here, if in June, the Vallejo City Council said, developer, you have to, if something blows up over the course of the maintenance, these pipes, you gotta replace it. Well, I mean, what's your response to that? I mean, because let's just say that condition is added to the plan, just playing a hypothetical, then there would be no need for a mediator.
Yeah, I think that's, yeah, as far as the mediation, it is looking at all these aspects of what could happen, looking at maintenance. We had talked with the Mare Island Company previously to say, how can we do some of these things? And when the North DDA came about, it was like setting up a funding mechanism and things like that. So we have started those conversations, but they just never got any.
I think then I'll just make a general comment. Thank you for the presentation, because this made the issue very clear. I think we've been kind of talking about bits and pieces of it over the course of a year. And what I will say, at least from my vantage point, is that where I feel like there may be a bit of a gap is in you guys actually requesting or allowing us to have a discussion around what it is that we want to see. Because I know Trustee Matulak, myself, others, over the course of a year have talked about the fact that we have opinions on what we want to do. And I'll just give you an example, right? So there's a part of Mare Island that the city owns. So if I was to call for a discussion item and I have this whole board support me in telling you that I want you to replace that pipe, then you have to do it. And it has very much felt like we haven't been allowed to have that conversation. And that's the issue that I have with this whole process, where it's like, we think you should do X. And it's like, well, what about what we think about this? Like, there's still land we own on Mare Island. We may want to activate the district and its financing capability to help us with some economic development work. And you may be able to help support that endeavor. And yet that discussion has not happened here. And I think that is still not going to happen, even if we go through this process, because you guys are just talking about the Mare Island Company. Like, so I'm going to, again, not just reiterate to the two of you, but also to the board. I do think at some point we need to have a specific conversation about Mare Island above and beyond the Mare Island Company, because it's not just the Mare Island Company operating in Mare Island. There's still parcels we own. There's still stuff that Navy owns. Have we gone back to the Navy and said, hey guys, you were operating this island for 150 years. You may want to write another check. We have a congressman. So like this is very complex, and I don't really feel like we're kind of hitting the conversation from all the different layers. And we're also doing this ahead of a conversation that the council has not had, which is like consideration of that specific plan and adoption of said specific plan. So I have concerns, and I've had those concerns, and I don't really know how do we move that to action because this is not just about the Mare Island Company. This is about the future of the city of Vallejo. And it's not about mainland subsidizing, because the mainland ratepayers, I'll counter one of your arguments, the mainland ratepayers may very well feel like, hey, you know what? We may want to make a $50 million investment in Mare Island because that will generate revenue for the city. And by extension, we all benefit from that. But we can't have that conversation as long as it's sort of narrowed through this particular lens. And so not to be the dead horse, but that's kind of what I've been saying for 14 months. And that's what I would like for us to talk about, whether that's like through a study session format or whatever. But we got to make sure we don't lose the forest for the trees.
Great comments. I think a lot of those are really great points. I think mediation will help. I think that'll at least get it started. And I think around that, then we start working on the other parts of it, working with Garamendi, which we'll talk about. We are going there next week. Looking at some of those things. You're right. It's multifaceted, and we want to jump in and help because we definitely see that with more economic development there, that'll help the infrastructure. But the infrastructure is key. You have to have infrastructure for development.
Yeah, and I mean, I was just doing research, and I've seen other districts just in the very small research I did. They've gone out at the direction of their board, and they've gotten iBank loans. They've replaced pipe because it has been part of that board's direction to stimulate and like get ED going on. They set up the stage for that. So I would appreciate an opportunity for us to have that broader conversation at some point.
No, that's great. And real quick, I mean, I'm just going to jump all over me from this, but as we get in rate setting and things like that, we're also like stirring down $100 million that we have to pay for nutrient removal and our debt service and what we have to pay and the impact to the ratepayers. You start to look at the whole picture and, throw another $50 million here, and all of a sudden the pain to the ratepayers gets pretty significant. So it is looking at the whole picture, but it's great it is.
Just clarifying, just if I could just ask a clarifying question. So when we're talking about having the conversation, has this conversation not been had at the city council level or on that side? Or are we just asking?
I'm just talking about right here.
Okay, no, because I'm just trying to understand.
It's never been had in this body.
And has it been had on the city council side?
It has previously, but they've been
In bits and pieces.
In bits and pieces. Okay, I'm just wanting to make sure if we're all having bits and pieces conversation, not the whole.
But these are great conversations. We also, we want to focus up. This is just a topic on mediation because we can talk from.
No, I know. I was just trying to get an understanding. Like
I love it. So it's like, but yeah, we want to focus on the mediation piece.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Thank you, President. And to help Trustee James to further understand, our conversation with the city council was a dual pronged approach. So the mediation was going to deal with ultimately what the legalese of the liability, responsibility, and all that other stuff. But we also have talked about, and we beat this to a dead horse, the fact that despite all of the legalese, all it is finger pointing at this point. But that does not preclude us, and when I say us, VFWD, the city of Vallejo and Mare Island Company, to have conversations about how to move forward with the infrastructure. Because at some point it has to be engineered.
Right.
So what we as a council have been hearing are projects can't go forward because of X, Y, or Z. And so we're trying to bypass that by at least the mediator is going to move the legalese side and the responsibility. So ultimately that's going to be determined. But that does not preclude us as a three-legged horse of the city council, not city council, but the city of Vallejo, VFWD, and Mare Island Company to actually sit in the room, which we've been asking for over 3 years now, to have these conversations, to figure out how do we build
the capacity that we need to do for economic development. So that's where this whole thing has been, this is the, in my mind, the precipice of what this conversation is for, and the fact that people have been finger pointing for, and I'll leave that to the mediator to ultimately decide. But we, as a group between the three agencies, have to sit down in the room and get this figured out. Because we are in the exact same place that we've been 3 years ago and beyond, where now, and we're having to explain to everyone, why don't we have economic development?
And if I may, sorry, trustee Mateo,
Yes.
a couple of things, just, we do have a meeting scheduled with the three parties on that March 4th.
Okay.
So we worked really hard to find a date, we tried to get it back in January.
No, but the fact that
But it-
this hasn't been moving forward until this mediation thing started coming up, this should have been happening 3 years ago. So that's our point of us getting to this point of asking this happen, because maybe this is gonna finally kickstart the three parties to be in the room to get this whole thing figured out. Period.
Thank you. I actually do appreciate this conversation because I remember listening a while back when you all used to meet at the city council. And I remember Aaron Hennigan even had some concerns. So I'm glad we have it. And great point to my colleague mentioning the Navy, because having all four at the table with the mediator, I think would be very crucial, even if the Navy can't be there, but send an invitation, because they too have a component being that I sit on RAB. That this is a conversation that needs to be held. But my mind is blown away that we are still feeling like my colleague stated, as if we never move forward. So having a mediator, particularly legally, would be great. And I think we can start not only getting business, because I've seen the land scope before they even developed housing. It was supposed to be a grocery store, it was supposed to be a motel, it was supposed to be all of this taking place. And to still, only thing really is there is a few business that's already been established, but nothing new infrastructure as we saw it to be. And only really development is the housing component. So, but what I saw before the model was that whole island was gonna be popping off. And so not to see that is very sad, what, 10, 20 years later. Thank you.
So a few questions. So that March 4th meeting, I did RSVP with that, but my understanding there's also another meeting, I think from your office or the city of Vallejo, that's also being coordinated. And I want to be sure, like, are y'all aware that there's also that March 4th meeting that's coming from VFWD?
Yes, so the plan, Eric was in touch, I think, was Eric in touch with you today? So the plan is to take that meeting that laboriously took several months to schedule and have that be the first one, and then use that slot going forward for a monthly slot.
Okay.
So yes, we merged the two, so as not to lose the one that already got everybody's availability.
Perfect, that sounds
Yeah.
great. And then with regard to the Conley Corridor project, my understanding is, please correct me, is that it is not affected. We don't have to wait for the specific plan. That's something that we can have a conversation about now, or no, this all get lumped in with everything else.
So the Conley Corridor, quite honestly, Conley Corridor was, as far as the DDA, the way I read the DDA from the city is it's separate, it was carved out. The city wanted something done rapidly, so Conley Corridor was carved out from the specific plan.
Right.
It is in the specific plan. We're still waiting for submittal. They haven't submitted final.
They being the Maryland company.
So we, as far as I know, Tracy, we still have yet to receive anything. One of the letters, the recent letter that you also received, they said that they're not submitting until all this ownership, I can't remember, the operation, maintenance, and ownership is resolved.
Okay.
That was the last letter sent to us, which we don't have a contract with them, so
Okay, so at this meeting that's coming up on March 4th, I want to make sure that conversation's also front loaded, because right now there are businesses there that are waiting for that to happen. Yes, we need to have the mediation conversation for all the infrastructure, but right now there are folks who are waiting for, hey, what's going on with Conley Corridor project, right? Let's do something right now that could affect
businesses and residents alike. So I want to make sure that gets front loaded no matter what. I don't want to get that lost in conversation. And with this mediator contract, is this going to result in an increase in rates for ratepayers? No.
Yeah, we're expecting, like Claire said, we don't know exactly how it'll happen. It should be split between 3 people. Hopefully it's $50,000 to $100,000 at most. I mean, depending on how long it takes. Could be less, could be more.
Okay, right.
Just a couple of questions. What are the risks of not participating in mediation? The risk from the district side?
I'll leave that to Claire. I mean, I mean, a little bit. I think there's just, we've already seen, we have letters going back and forth between attorneys. There's a lot of uncertainty on some of the agreements. So now in the last letter, Maryland company basically said that, because until this ownership operation gets resolved, they're not moving forward, which things like that violates the DDA. So I think there's potential for litigation through it all. And there.
What will be the anticipated timeline for this mediation? I know I heard several months, but the lack of timeline has created this. We're here 23 years later. So what will be like the timeline from that?
I think it's gonna take a year. As you know, it's hard enough just to get people together in a room. So I try to get the 3 parties together and start working on this. I would say minimum 6 months. It could take a year.
The steps in the process, again, like the city attorney hasn't reached out to me yet. We agendized this because we wanted to get ahead of it, but I'm assuming she was gonna take the first step. But then I think we would talk about a schedule, we would talk about a mediator, we would choose a mediator, we want to get authority from you now, if you are willing to authorize it so that we can move forward with the process. We would then, one of the hard parts here, and we talked about this before, is the division, the wearing of 2 hats issue with the 7 of the 8 members of this council, of this board, right, and the city council. So we would probably need to talk about having a division again, like what we talked about before on real estate, so that we have folks that are gonna be, when we go into closed session potentially and talk about things like litigation risk, that we have a group that's on one side and a group that's on the other, so that you don't get attorney-client privilege advice from both sides, right? It's just a conflict of interest. So we wanna resolve that, and I think that that's something that the city attorney and I would try to talk about and make consistent recommendations. Of course, it's the discretion of this board of trustees and the discretion of the city council, but I think we would try to come up with consistent recommendations to each of our clients to how that approach. So we would need to go through that. I do think that the timeline, we are a responsive agency. I just want to make that's clear also that we are different than the county or the city. County or city has economic development power. We do not. We really just have environmental regulatory power, and we respond to what people want to develop. But there is litigation risk. There's absolutely litigation risk, and it's on both sides. So there's on one side there's litigation risk that the city or the Mare Island company could sue the district for an enforcement of what they think their rights are under our agreement. On the other side is if we take certain expenditures and we put them into the rates and charges, we face a ratepayer challenge for charging the mainland for services they're not receiving. And so these are risks that I would want to advise this board on in closed session. So that's part of this process, and I don't know how to be more specific about that without getting deeper into it. Those are the concerns that I have moving forward this process, and just that it doesn't represent, I think, the expectations of the parties when we started this long before any of you were on any of these councils. I will mention one other thing, if I may, that when we started discussing this maybe 3 years ago, when Mark's predecessor was the general manager, Melissa, it was at the time, we also had a different city manager. And this was maybe 3 months before both of them retired. And Mike and Melissa, and we were all on a call with Mare Island was in this room. We were all here, and then Mike was on it, and Terrence, I think, former assistant city manager or public works director. And where we kind of ended up was this is such a difficult problem that the city was going to take the lead in trying to lobby for federal funds. Because if we get federal funds, to Gordon's comments, because the Navy made a mess of this, and so wouldn't it be right for the Navy to come in or the federal government to come in and help bankroll the rehabilitation and replacement of those facilities. And that was sort of like on the agenda to like get done next, and then we had this major turnover in senior leadership in both organizations. So I just want to mention that was out there at one point. I know that Mark and you guys are going to DC next week, looking for more federal funds, but that is also potentially one way to help us out. If we have a third party check writer, that helps eliminate some of the stressors here that are on all the three stakeholders.
So I just want to comment and then I'll turn it over to Trustee Gordon. So you did answer one of my questions, because when I know for a fact when you're going into mediation, it is confidential. And so we have this unusual set of circumstances where there has to be a discussion if we're going into mediation. What does that mean for this board? And you talked about there has to be a delineation. Otherwise, how are you really going into mediation appropriately?
Well, and so the one of the biggest issues that arises is the attorney-client privilege, that if I, if I tell a member of this board who then goes into closed session that's wearing their hat as a city council person, we've waived the privilege, and now all of my discussions are public. So my recommendation is we find a way to delegate authority to a committee or to a group. The one obvious member of that group is of course the supervisor, because there's no conflict there, and then find a way to divide this so that you can each have, if necessary, either quorum on both sides. The quorum here is 5, quorum on city council is 4, or you can do a subcommittee of less than that, and you delegate authority. We can go either way, and we don't even have to make that decision today, but it's helpful for us to sort of preview that. But my recommendation is that you pick a side for the purpose of deliberations and decision-making for the two separate entities.
But we don't have to do that now.
No, I know, I'm just daylighting it. Yeah. And then, just as it relates to all the parties coming together, your first March 4th meeting, what does that meeting look like as it relates to, there's two sides. Again, we sit on both sides, and
There's 3 sides.
3 sides.
Yeah.
Well, but I'm talking about this board and
Yeah,
SF
yeah.
and the city council. Who outside of yourselves would be sitting in those meetings from this board? Versus, I don't need to deal with the city council side, but I'm curious.
Well, the two requesters were trustee Source and trustee Palmer, so.
So are you both representing the city and the water district? I just wanna, we really need to talk about conflict. And I really wanna delineate that so that we can sit comfortably in our decision when we're sitting in this role and when we're sitting at the city council role, and we don't have conflict when we're dealing with each of the attorneys. So this is why I'm bringing this forward.
Sure.
I can clarify or.
Go ahead.
I mean, I think the vision when we set this up was that there is a lot of progress that can be made with the two agencies' joint interests in mind and our shared constituents in mind. And as much of that as can be facilitated, needs to be facilitated to move forward. And because we sit on both boards and represent the residents on the island, that we would convene that and try to move forward as much as possible, just in holding that space. And then upon whatever time a decision would need to be made, we wouldn't be making any hard decisions anyway, but we would then be going to the two boards. Personally, my hope for the mediator was that we wouldn't have to divide up, because the hope would be that this is unfortunately a really, really, it's not a great situation for any of the parties involved, because 20 years ago, when all of these agreements, the ownership in particular, was discussed, it was a very different landscape. And I don't know how much, just so everybody's on the same page, one of the things in question was there was an agreement back in 2004 or 5? 2005, that VFWD would take ownership of most of the infrastructure on Mare Island. They reached that agreement, but it never got filed. So the ownership never actually transferred. So the city can say, well, you guys agreed in 2005 to take ownership of this infrastructure, and VFWD can say, well, no, it never actually got transferred to us, so we never actually assumed ownership of the infrastructure. So both parties now, 20 years later, we have this aging infrastructure that nobody at that time thought would still exist in its current form because everybody thought that there was going to be development. Now we've got this massive liability of this aging infrastructure and two agencies that neither really has any full clarity on what it means. That's the goal with the mediator. And at the end of the day, as I see it, it's the same taxpayers. It's the same residents, it's the same citizens. If both boards and both of us on our hats on our boards authorize a mediation, the lawyers go into mediation, they come up with a resolution that seems fair, it would come back out to us on both boards and we can just all vote for it. If the mediation fails, or if there's a real grievance issue, then we would probably have to split into two parties.
So you.
So the way that
You won't be on that mediation, like you're.
No, that's exactly what I can't speak for, so Trustee Palmares and I went through many iterations of frustration in trying to just convene. I mean, all we were really trying to do was convene for Connolly. Can I finish just the sentence that I was gonna say? Just trying to convene around Connolly, we were getting so much pushback on the ownership that we felt like we didn't want to be in the legal discussion. Let's go ahead and get that done by a mediator, and what we'll continue to be in is the policy, just those policy discussions to make sure that it moves forward as we had discussed. So that's kind of my vision for it, is that we're there convening two boards that we're on and trying to push the work forward.
I'll let you interject and then I'll come back to my question.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, the way I was envisioning, I think we shared the same vision, was we weren't treating it as like a subcommittee where we're making decisions. We're just using our offices to convene folks that we're convening, frankly. And so that was it.
Yeah,
Like
because the convening wasn't happening for
That's
3 years, so we're gonna push
Sure,
it.
I barely said anything, but just because they weren't talking, like that just needed to happen. And so that was honestly the intent. So because that was the intent, it didn't feel, at least at the time, that, we need to have that delineation. With that said, if we want to make things cleaner, that's fine. I mean, frankly, I'm hoping the mediation would just, leave us out of it for the most part. So I don't, it's like a work or whatever, but like other than, city council stuff and this stuff. So but if we want to have a delineation and have some other persons represent the VFWD, that's also fine. I just kind of want to move this forward.
I mean, we do want to stick on the topic of mediation. We're talking about this meeting on March 4th, so we're kind of it seems like we don't really have the.
But I am talking about March 4th.
Well, the topic here is on the mediation, just doing that. March 4th is a kind of a separate talk, but I understand it's an issue, but
it's not all interconnected, hard to pull it apart.
But let me just offer, if I can just offer sort of how I see these things connected, which is that initiating mediation doesn't require us to do any separating. But as soon as the mediator starts making mediators proposals, or we start asking for decisions, we are gonna have to come back and retreat to our corners. And it is at that point, which of course we all hope is sooner rather than later, that we will need to make some decisions about separating out the attorney-client privilege groups of electeds. So I think it is sufficiently enough related that the Brown Act isn't necessarily implicated here, so I think I understand where you're going, President Levision, but that element of this wasn't agendized today, but I think it's definitely worth this discussion and perhaps bringing back at our next meeting about the actual direction we go, so that we've all sort of socialized it a bit, thought about it, if that's all right with you.
No, that's great. I think we danced around it a lot this whole year. And I get what both trustees, vice president, then president was trying to accomplish. And I agree, it's been a long conversation. But at the same time, there can be a conflict when you're sitting on both sides. And I think we need to acknowledge that, be cognizant of it, and what it can create and cause on both sides. Because it has caused some things, and we need to be careful. And I don't want to ignore it. And I'll turn it over to Trustee Gordon.
Thank you so much for that. So, trying to stick to your topic here, I was gonna ask about who's going to be part of the March 4th meeting. And what was that gonna look like? Because is one gonna represent the city, one was gonna represent here. But my real question would be, what did you all do prior to this? Because this board has been having conversations and moving forward, and they never had to split up prior to. So how was that handling before, or we just, anything that had to do with the city and flood waterways? And I don't ever recall anyone ever having to split up. I even spoke to previous councils and I asked them, what was the big issue? And it was only because of Mare Island recently that may have been some gray areas, but overall, they were able to work it out. As we're grown people, we separate our hats all the time. And so, unless there's a lack of trust somewhere, we should not have to split up. I do appreciate though, having a mediator. Let you all hash that out and then bring it to each board we sit on. Because we make decisions all the time and okay, what hat we wearing today? You know what I mean? You have to trust that we are here in the best interest of each place we're sitting in. You have to trust us to do that. And so, and I feel that there may be some great concerns there. So, but it has never been that either board had to split up in prior to this conversation. And I like to keep it that way myself personally.
If I could just provide a little feedback, I've been on this for the district for a little over 10 years and understanding the way Melissa, my predecessor, ran it and the way the past city managers, it was always that everything was trying to be solved in the general manager, city manager level. Like nothing wanted to go to the city council or the board that could be handled at the city manager level. It wasn't until recently that other people have come in and said, no, this all goes to the city council or this all goes out because we're not going to answer these questions. So there's been a shift. So you're absolutely right. There's been a shift on the way issues have been handled with both here and the city that I've seen, is that the issues are being raised up instead of being really handled by the staff. So you're right, there's absolutely been a change. Melissa worked very hard to keep most issues, with staff and at her level. So that has been a change.
Thank you for answering that. But I do support having a mediator, and if that didn't move the way we need to, then we can have another conversation. But until then, I think having a mediator would, and then asking all four individuals to step in, as included me, to step in with the cost for the mediator. Cost. I'm just saying. I have a doubt I can contribute, just kidding. Thank you.
So if there are no more questions, we'll have the vice president.
Yeah. So I'll move the authorization of the mediator as previously read in full by the general manager.
Do you want to vote for or vote for Madam President? Voice? Yeah. All in favor?
I,
Anyone against or abstain? Great comment today.
So we will move to the general manager's report.
Great. Thank you. So we persevered through the rain, the thunder and lightning that you saw this morning, but thank you to operations for effectively managing the flow of the treatment plant, maintenance for keeping everything working, and field operation for doing the storm drains, make sure things are flowing. So we're going to bring out the best in our staff, and we continue to meet up and get the job done. No significant problems were encountered that I know. We were able to handle all flow and clear up any blockages or anything that we had with the storm drain system or anything. All got it working. The Wing Migration Expo on January 31st and February 1st on Mare Island was a success. I want to thank Rochelle Canones, our community outreach specialist, for doing an outstanding job assisting with organizing the event. Jeff Tucker, who worked the booth, also Eddie Castillo Gomez, and Sandy Lee for staffing the VFWD table at the event. This was a well-attended event that provided a great opportunity for us to engage with the community. And it was on Mare Island, so a lot of Mare Island residents were there, so we got to talk to them quite a bit. I say I, but it was Jeff, and I just purchased, I wrote my son. Next week, Jeff and I will attend a California Association of Sanitation Agencies, CASA, Polyform in Washington DC. We will team up with Supervisor James on our congressional visits with Congressman Garamendi and Senator Schiff. We're going to be there to support Maryland infrastructure and also circle liability exemption for PFAS. There's a liability for us, but for the most part, we'll continue to work with Garamendi, the 1.09. Thank you for that, and also be looking for more money, looking for other things with SHIP Act and other things like you're talking about. What are the things out there? We know the cities work with the Roosevelt Group. I work with the DoD, trying to work on whatever avenue we can to bring money into and more industry and jobs into Maryland. So we're certainly doing our part to help with the infrastructure. That's the end of my report.
Thank you for that. So we'll move on to the community forum. Mr. Clerk, do we have any members of the public wanting to speak virtually or in person?
We don't, Madam President.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to reports by presiding officers. Are there any reports? Comments? Comments, yes. Yes. Okay.
So as the county representative on this board, I continue to be deeply concerned about the repeated incidents in which the district and the city have conflicting interests and the difficult position that puts us in as members on this board. I believe a change in our governance structure is necessary because the governance structure of this board is set by statute. This requires legislative change to the board structure. My predecessor, Supervisor Hannigan, was also concerned about this, and after speaking with her, county council, and my alternate trustee from the county, I placed an item on the Board of Supervisors agenda earlier this month. The Board of Supervisors authorized county staff and myself to collaborate with the district and the city to draft and hopefully sponsor legislation in support of changes to the VFWD Board of Trustees composition to better balance representation in support of the district's current and changing provisions of services. In particular, I would like to propose consideration of a 5-member board with 2 members each from the city and the county, and a 5th member appointed by the majority of the 4 members, which will include city and county. And I'm open to other structures that will avoid the repeated conflicts we've seen over the past year. And I would ask the GM Tomko to bring back at the next month's board meeting an agenda item for this board to consider supporting the legislative change to our governing board structure consistent with this proposal. Thank you.
I mean, we don't necessarily have a structure like the city does of doing things, but I can certainly add it and or we can work on it.
Thank you. Any other trustee reports?
I'll have an item then. I also want you guys to consider to have added to the next agenda. Thank you. I'll email it to the 2 of you.
Trustee Green.
Thank you. For me, I would like to see how we can incorporate this particular district to have more conversations within the community. Whether it be a forum, whether it be connected to, one of us have a town hall meeting, but to invite you all to come to the table to report out. For example, I know that there's a lot has changed regarding older buildings, for example, and they're having to require to get their ladder system fixed. Well, there was some type of rule that if they went for like 100, I guess at the end of their 60 year, it's only when they were able to do that. Or if they build or did something different, well, that has not changed. So having our community more educated about what is needed is really important right now. Cause I have I have meet and greet, and you can't imagine how many times the waterway comes up to cross station, as I shared with you earlier, and I even read out to you. So just having you also invited to these meetings would be helpful, and see how you feel about that.
No, I appreciate it. I think I'm attending one with Supervisor James, Trustee James.
Yeah, perfect example.
But yeah, I mean, if things come up, I mean, I can attend them all. But I have other people here.
Yeah, yeah.
As well, we certainly want to get out with the community and really educate people on what we're doing. So yeah, happy to just let us know.
It could last, like, for example, the smell, you see how that blew up in the community, and it became the only conversation, right? So maybe having a structure where they can talk about that prior to, and you can educate her. Because all that time, for example, we thought that smell came from here, but actually it was a PG&E. You know, it was the dock area. So we got a chance to understand that, you know, more in depth.
Yeah, we have some great community outreach things coming up, so we'll have some exciting things coming up. We just should
Thank you.
certainly invite us on invitations.
Was that worded right? Did you take notes? Did you word that, do that right?
I'll make sure that.
All right, thank you.
Any other trustee comments? Okay. Seeing none, we will then move on to closed session. And General Collins, would you please announce the item?
Sure, we have two items, scheduled for closed session. The first is a public employee performance evaluation under government code 54957 regarding general manager, and the second is conflict of labor negotiators, pursuant to government code 54957.6, which is to designate the board president to negotiate with the general manager. If there are any comments in person or online, now it's time to make them, otherwise we'll convene into closed session and clear the room.
Can I comment that can we do B first and then A second? Is that possible? Because
At the chair's,
I'll
discretion.
request that, sure.
Yes. Do we need to vote?
No, there's no need to, that we can go into closed session, we can do that. So why don't we clear the room?
Thank you.
Say, you should be talking.
You should be